Hello, and welcome back to Crimson Dread. Before we begin, feel free to leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. I love reading every single one. If you enjoy drifting into dark, chilling tales drenched in Crimson Dread, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Now get comfortable, dim the lights if you dare, relax your mind, let the outside world fade away, and let's begin. Story 1. I have a confession, and it's embarrassing to admit out loud. Lately, I've been forgetting things. It started small, the way it always does. Misplacing my bag, losing my keys, setting my phone down, and then spending 10 minutes walking in circles looking for it. I told myself it was stress, because stress is the answer that keeps you from falling apart. I'm a mother of 8 kids. My brain is never quiet. I'm always counting heads, making sure someone has shoes, someone has homework, someone has their lunch, someone has their medicine, someone isn't crying in a back room for a reason they won't explain. I'm always thinking about them, hardly ever about myself. So when I started forgetting little things, I shrugged it off. I joked about mom brain. I laughed when I couldn't remember why I'd walked into the pantry. I made it into something harmless. Then it became impossible to ignore. Forgetting normal stuff turned into mixing up my children's names. At first, I'd confuse the teenagers. 2 tall boys in the same age range, both growing too fast, both changing hairstyles, both looking at me like I'm ancient. I'd call one by the other's name and correct myself quickly, pretending it was just a playful mistake. But it got worse. I started calling my daughter by a completely different name. Not a similar one, not something close. A name that didn't belong in our house at all. And the worst part wasn't the mistake. The worst part was the smile I forced onto my face afterward. The way I'd turn it into a joke so they wouldn't see the fear underneath. Pretending was lying. I wasn't their strong mom who could never get sick. I wasn't the one who always knew what to do, the one who could handle anything. I was supposed to be super mom. That was the mask, the one every mother wears even if she doesn't admit it. We put it on to protect our kids. We put it on because we know they watch us, and if they see us break, they start to imagine the world breaking too. There's an unspoken promise you make when you give birth. You never say it out loud, but it sits in your bones. I will give myself to you, my blood and breath and bones. If I wasn't Supermom, my kids would get scared. They would start wondering if I was going to disappear one day. They'd start thinking about what happens when a mother gets sick. They would look at me differently, like they were already practicing living without me. No matter what, I had to be okay. I'm a mom. I told myself. I'm their mom. I'm Supermom. And then I started blacking out. That's what really scared me. It wasn't forgetting a word here or there. It was losing time. I'd be doing something ordinary, cooking dinner, vacuuming the downstairs hallway, folding laundry, and then I'd wake up in a different place. Upstairs, in the garage, standing in front of the fridge with the door open. Sometimes I'd find myself halfway through a conversation I didn't remember starting, answering a question I didn't remember being asked. My thoughts started to feel foggy, like they were bleeding away the moment I tried to grab them. There was a hollow vacancy inside me, like someone had scooped out part of my mind and left an empty space behind. One afternoon, I snapped at my 16-year-old son for no reason at all. He had only asked me something simple, where the clean towels were, I think, and my mouth turned sharp before I could stop it. Sorry, sweetie, I told him afterward, my voice too tight. All he did was smile at me. He didn't roll his eyes. He didn't argue. He didn't look annoyed. He just smiled like he was trying to help me pretend. And something in me unraveled when I saw that, because it felt wrong. I felt wrong, like a stranger had slid inside my skin and was wearing me badly. I'm not feeling good became my favorite excuse. It was better than the truth, better than saying I think I'm getting dementia, or worse, I think I have a brain tumor. My kids noticed, of course they did. They noticed when I forgot their favorite meals. They noticed when I mixed up their ages. They noticed when I asked the same question twice in 10 minutes and didn't realize I'd already asked it. They noticed when I stood too long in doorways like I couldn't remember what room I was going to. One morning, I gave Anastasia, my youngest, a plate of peanut butter cookies like it was a treat. She's allergic. She has been since birth. The look on her face when she realized what I'd handed her was small and careful, like she didn't want to frighten me, like she was already learning how to manage her mother's mistakes. That terrified me more than anything. They noticed my paranoia, too, because it was getting worse. I started demanding to know why they were coming home late, even when they weren't late at all. Their quiet conversations in the hallways started to feel personal, like they were about me even when they weren't. If I heard whispering, my stomach would twist. They're talking about you again. They think you're losing it. They're planning for when you can't take care of them. And sometimes I'd catch them looking at me with wobbling lips and wet eyes, like they knew something was wrong and they were trying to pretend it wasn't. But I was fine. I told myself I was fine. I told the universe I was fine, like I could force it into being true. At some point, I made an appointment with a neurologist. I remember doing it. I remember the phone call, the hold music, the way I scribbled something down on a scrap of paper. The problem was, I couldn't remember when the appointment was. And then, one morning, I couldn't find my phone at all. I searched the kitchen counters, the couch cushions, the bathroom sink, the laundry room. I checked my pockets like it might have slipped into them without me noticing. I even looked in the fridge because my mind had gotten bad enough that I could imagine myself setting a phone next to the orange juice and thinking it made sense. Nothing. Hey, Mom? I blinked hard. The world snapped into focus like I'd been underwater and finally surfaced. My son stood in front of me. Adam, tall, ashy blonde hair, glasses that always slid down his nose. His smile looked strained, like he was trying to shape it into something normal, but his face didn't believe it. His eyes wouldn't meet mine. Mom, he said again, softly, like he was speaking to someone sick. I said, that's enough milk. I looked down. My hand was still pouring milk into his cereal bowl. The Choco Flakes had already risen above the rim and were floating in a pale flood that spilled onto the table. I hadn't noticed. I hadn't even felt my arm moving. My fingers jerked and I set the pitcher down too hard. Instead of explaining, instead of admitting I didn't know how long I'd been standing there, I grabbed a cloth and started wiping up the mess like that was the important part. My 8 children sat around our long dining table. 8 faces, 8 pairs of eyes staring at me. I could see their fear, their confusion, their careful silence. And I hated myself because I could barely piece together all their names in the right order. My mind tried to sort them like photos scattered on a floor. I forced a smile. I tried to make my voice light, but I was suddenly aware that my nose was bleeding. It wasn't a small trickle. It was warm and wet, running down toward my upper lip. I lifted my hand, and when I wiped it away, I saw dark red smeared across my fingers. Mommy? Anastasia stirred her cereal with her spoon. Her voice was small. She leaned toward one of her sisters to whisper something. And something twisted in my gut. They're talking about you again. I don't know what came over me. It felt like a snap inside my skull, like a rubber band breaking. Hey, I barked, and my voice sounded like it came from someone else. Eat your breakfast and keep your mouths shut, all right? Heat rose in my cheeks, fast and humiliating. I slammed my fist down on the table hard enough to rattle the bowls. Stop talking about me, I said, louder. Stop fucking talking about me. I can hear you talking about me. The second the words left my mouth, regret hit me so hard it made my eyes sting. I clamped my mouth shut, breathing through my nose like that would hold everything in. Tears blurred my vision. I'm sorry, I whispered. Mommy's just tired. All right? I'm just tired. I sniffed, swiping at my face, and the cloth in my hand became spotted red. I took 2 steps toward the doorway, meaning to leave the room before I said something worse, meaning to go upstairs, lock myself in my bedroom, and lie down until I could feel like myself again. But my legs ached. My body suddenly felt heavy and wrong, like my bones had been swapped out while I wasn't looking. Each step took too much effort. I just need to go and lie down, I managed. Words felt difficult. Not just emotionally difficult, physically difficult, like my mouth couldn't shape them right. Breathing felt wrong too, like sucking in air was like pulling poison into my lungs. Then I noticed something else. The silence wasn't normal. All 8 of my children weren't reacting. No clinking spoons, no shifting chairs, no nervous "Mom, are you okay?" No crying. They were too still, like they were waiting for something. Mom. Adam's face blurred in front of me as he stood. He walked around the table and came close. He reached for me, and for a second I thought he was going to touch my forehead, like checking for a fever. But his fingers didn't go to my forehead. They went to my scalp. They moved lightly through my hair, then down the back of my neck. Not like a child touching his mother's head. More like someone checking seams on clothing. "Mom," his voice dropped to a low murmur, almost tender. "Can you tell me what my name is?" I nodded, even though dizziness rolled through me. "Ace," I whispered, reaching up to stroke his hair like I'd done 1,000 times. "You're my son." He nodded, tears filling his eyes. "It's okay, Mom," he said softly. "You're going to be okay." I reached out to hug him, to pull him to my chest, to feel my son's warmth and remind myself I was real. But my arm didn't move the way it should. My right arm slipped. Just slipped. It fell off. It hit the floor with a heavy, sick thud, like a piece of meat dropped onto tile. For a moment, my brain refused to accept it. I stared at the spot where my arm had been attached, waiting for the reality to rearrange itself into something sane. "Ace," I whispered, and my voice sounded distant, like it came from another room. I blinked, and something dislodged inside my skull. My eye popped out. It landed on the floor and rolled under the table like a marble. I waited for screaming, for hysteria, for my children to scatter, to cry, to call 911. I was falling apart in front of them. But Adam, Ace, only frowned like he was disappointed in the result. He said, leaning closer. He prodded my face with 2 fingers like he was inspecting a defect. Maybe the new arms were a bad idea. He turned his head toward the table. His fingers gripped my chin and forced me to look at him. Through one working eye, I saw his expression change into something cold and annoyed, as if he were talking about a broken appliance. "Whose fucking suggestion was it to add the arms?" he demanded. Hers were fine. One of my older boys, Zach, spoke up from the table, sounding defensive. "I mean, we found her in a garbage disposal. She needed new arms. How else was she gonna make our breakfast and clean up?" My mind tried to scream. My throat tried to shape words. Nothing came out right. I could only make small sounds, breathy and wet, like I didn't know how to speak anymore. Ace looked back at me, and his face softened into a wide, friendly smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Sorry, Mom," he said brightly, like he was talking to a toddler who'd gotten scared. "Give me a sec, all right?" Darkness swallowed me. Not a normal blackout. Not the foggy slipping away I'd experienced before. This was deep, clean nothing. When I opened my eyes again, there was a low humming sound. I was in a bed. My body felt stiff and wrong, and I realized I was hooked up to a machine sitting beside me. Tubes. Wires. A steady hum like a motor working just out of sight. I tried to move, and pain sparked along my arm where something had been taped to my skin. Ace sat cross-legged on the bed near my legs, a laptop balanced on his knees like he was doing homework. "I was 8 when my parents died," he said, not looking at me at first. His eyes were locked on the screen. They called me a genius. I was supposed to start college at 9, He hit the spacebar hard, like he was angry at the computer. But then the world ended, he said, finally lifting his head. My parents were dead, bird flu decimated half the population, and the rest lost their minds. His mouth twisted. Everyone was dead, and for a long time we lost ourselves. We did so much fucked up shit to survive. He lowered the laptop slowly, like he wanted me to see he was being serious now. My vision was blurry, but I managed to turn my head slightly. There was someone else in the bed next to me. A man, early 20s maybe, or what was left of a man. His skull was open. Wires protruded from where bone should have been. His body was stitched like a doll, different shades of skin and mismatched limbs, seams running across him in thick, ugly lines. He looked like someone had built him out of parts, without caring if he fit. Ace followed my gaze and smiled proud. "But then we found you," he said. My mouth was dry. My tongue felt too big. "A woman," Ace continued casually. "Dead, obviously," he smirked, like the word was funny. "Somebody dumped your body in a trash can, and I realized I wanted a mom. That's what we needed, all of us, to stop killing each other, to stop losing our humanity just to survive." He stood up and walked to my side. With practiced ease, he pulled a needle out of my arm like it was no big deal. "You didn't have a head," he said, like he was listing groceries. "Someone cut it off, probably to eat you. No offense, but no adults means no food, and no food means—" He shook his head like he didn't want to finish the sentence. He patted my shoulder. His hand was warm, too normal for what he was saying. "Anyway, I gave you a new one," he said. "The rest of you was pretty intact, so I collected some old bodies, waved my magic wand, and bam, I've finally got a mother." His smile curled at the edges like he was pleased with a project well done. "Anastasia was just a baby when we found her," he went on. "She cried for her mommy, and it drove me fucking insane that I couldn't give her what she wanted. I couldn't make her happy." His voice sharpened for a second like an old wound. "I was just a kid, and this group of kids saw me as a leader, like a dad." He gestured toward the stitched man beside me and jabbed at the laptop keys. The man's body jerked violently. His eyelids fluttered. His jaw twitched. Ace grinned wider. "So I got them one," he said. "He's a work in progress. No sign of life yet. We pulled him out of a lake." He leaned closer to my face, excited. "I still need to download some things, so he's basically a shell. But don't you think he looks like a dad?" He helped me sit up. My joints creaked in ways joints shouldn't. "Your memory lapses were your consciousness waking up," Ace said, calmer now, like he was soothing me. "But it's okay, Mom. I took it all away. I didn't know how to answer. I didn't know what I was allowed to feel." I nodded because nodding was easier than screaming. Ace guided me downstairs. The house looked like my house. The dining room looked like my dining room. The table was the same table, worn in the same places, surrounded by the same chairs. My children sat waiting. They looked up and smiled like everything was normal. "Mommy," Anastasia sang, bouncing slightly in her seat. "Are you feeling better?" I grabbed a bowl. My hands moved like they'd done it forever. I poured her favorite cereal. "Of course, honey," I said, and the words came out smooth, practiced. Mommy's never felt better. How many people was I wearing? Whose head was stitched onto my flesh? Who was I before I was a mom? Did I have a name before they gave me theirs? "Yay," Anastasia giggled. My hands moved again. I reached for something under the sink and pulled out plant killer. The kind meant for weeds, with warnings printed on the label in bold letters. My fingers didn't shake. My face kept smiling. I poured it into the cereal. Not just one bowl. All of them. Then I heard a voice from the doorway. Bright and loud, like a man stepping into a commercial. "Good morning, my little rascals." My whole body went cold. The stitched man from upstairs stood in the doorway. He walked in with an easy confidence, A wide grin stretched across his face. Half of his brain was hanging out. He moved like his body hadn't fully agreed to be a body yet. Small jerks, little stutters in motion. But he was walking. He was here. My children reacted immediately, chairs scraping back as they rushed to him with excited cries. "Daddy!" He hugged them back, laughing, patting heads, saying their names like he'd always known them. Then he came to me. He saw the bowls. He saw what I'd done. He took the bowl in my hands and dumped it down the sink like it was nothing, like he was correcting a simple mistake. He handed me a small pill bottle. His smile stayed wide, but his eyes didn't match it. His eyes looked terrified. He tried to speak, and his words stumbled out, broken and jerking along with his body. "Let's give them something they'll really enjoy," he said, still smiling too hard. I took the bottle and squeezed it in my fist. My mismatched fingers creaked. He winked, still maintaining that grin, but his eyes were screaming at me to understand. He reached down and grabbed my hand. His grip was so tight I felt real pain, sharp and bright, like something in me still knew what pain was supposed to mean. "Right, darling?" he said. I stared at him. I didn't know his name. I didn't know his life. I didn't know if there was any part of him left behind those stitched seams and wires, but I understood what he was asking. I smiled back. I slid my hand into his, entangling my fingers with his like we were a normal couple in a normal kitchen. "Right," I said. From the table, Ace's voice cut through the room, impatient and sharp like a king giving orders. "Then make us breakfast," he said. "Cereal and toast, please. You know I like the corners cut." My body turned toward the counter. Dad, if he was Dad, didn't let go of my hand. He stood close enough that I could feel the heat of him. He kept squeezing, steady pressure, like he was anchoring me to a decision. I got to work. He made toast with shaking hands, cutting the corners the way Ace liked. I poured 8 bowls of cereal, my breath catching as I opened the pill bottle. I pulled off the cap. My hands moved with a steady calm that wasn't mine. I snapped a capsule and sprinkled it into the first bowl. Then the second. Dad leaned closer, his voice dropping to a low murmur meant only for me. "It'll be painless," he said. "Don't worry, they'll just go to sleep." He never let go of my hand. He squeezed until I could barely breathe. Stolen breath from stolen lungs that weren't mine. I wondered again what his real name was. I wondered who he had been before he became Dad. I wondered if he remembered anything, or if he only carried fear like a leftover reflex. When breakfast was ready, I carried the bowls to the table with a wide, perfect smile. Dad joined me, still holding my hand, still squeezing. My children dug in. Ace looked up at me through a mouthful of Choco Flakes and grinned like he was proud of his creation. "Love you, Mom," he said. "You're the best." And I kept smiling, because that's what moms do. That's what Supermom does, even when she doesn't know whose face she's wearing. Story 2. I watch small things rot now, and I think of you. I watch mold spread over old bread, slow and soft and unstoppable. I watch a dead snake's head dry out in the sun until it hardens into something that no longer looks like it ever lived. I watch these things change, decay, and become something else, and all I can think about is how helpless I felt watching sickness move through you. It was like venom in your blood. Slow at first, then faster, then everywhere. Nothing stopped it, not the doctors, not the pills, not the machines, not the prayers I whispered into empty rooms when you were finally asleep. Not even me. I would have paid any price to anyone who promised they could save you. I would have bought every fake cure, every miracle bottle, every strange elixir from every liar in every dark corner of the world if there had been even the smallest chance one of them could take your pain away. I would have believed anything if believing it meant I could keep you here. That kind of helplessness changes a person. You knew helplessness too. Yours was worse. Mine was being unable to save you. Yours was being trapped inside a body that had turned against you. Unable to make the pain stop, unable to disappear from it, unable to rest without suffering following you into sleep. I wished so many times that I could take it from you. I wished pain could be moved from one body to another like water poured from one glass into the next. I would have taken all of it, every cough, every fever, every needle, every burning muscle, every sleepless night. I would have carried it in my own bones if it meant you could breathe freely again. But pain does not work that way. Love does not make miracles just because it is desperate enough. I lay awake at night and whispered to the darkness about better days, lighter days, days when we still laughed in the kitchen and pretended everything would be fine. Days when we knew you were sick, but the sickness had not yet taken everything from you. Back then, there was still enough of you left to smile, to tease me, to ask about my day, to talk about old stories as if tomorrow was promised to us. Then the sickness grew, and hope became harder to hold. People who have never cared for someone dying do not understand what it does to you. They think grief begins after death, but that is not true. Sometimes grief moves in while the person is still breathing. It sits beside you while you wash medical tubes. It follows you when you crush pills. It stands over your shoulder while the person you love begs you not to make them swallow another dose. Every day I cleaned your trachea, I flushed your feeding tube, I wiped your mouth, I checked your machines, I gave you medication you no longer wanted. I watched your eyes fill with tired anger when I told you it was time again. Another pill, another treatment, another procedure, another reason to keep going. You begged me not to. Sometimes you did not use words. You were too weak for words. You only turned your head away or closed your eyes or held my wrist with what little strength you had left. I always understood what you meant. Enough, please. No more. And still I kept you alive. That question still burns inside me. For whom? Was I keeping you alive for you because I believed there was still life left for you to experience? Or was I doing it for myself because I could not face a world where your love no longer existed beside me? Who was I to make that choice? Who was I to stand between you and death, using tubes and machines and bottles of medicine like tools against something that might have been mercy? I tried to harden myself. I tried to become numb. I told myself caregivers had to be strong. I told myself that love meant doing the hard things even when the person you loved hated you for them. But every day broke something in me. Watching someone you love suffer while still alive is a private kind of grief. It is shameful because part of you mourns them before they are gone. Part of you misses who they were while their body still lies in front of you. I hated myself for that. I hated that I sometimes looked at you and remembered who you used to be more clearly than I could see who you were now. But your grief was greater than mine. You had to live inside the pain, you had to look at the world and decide every day whether you still had enough strength to stay in it. You had to feel your own life becoming smaller. Bed, chair, machine, tube, pills, breath, pain, sleep, repeat. I wanted more for you. I wanted you to see my children born one day. I wanted you to see your own children grow older and safer because of everything you had given them. I wanted you to be there for birthdays and holidays and ordinary mornings. I wanted your hands strong again. I wanted your laugh in the house. I wanted you to dance in the living room one more time, even badly. I wanted you to bake pastries in our cramped kitchen, complaining that there was never enough counter space. That fantasy lived inside me like a fever. What if you got better? What if the next treatment worked? What if I stopped pushing right before the miracle arrived? What if I let you go when I should have fought harder? Those questions wrapped around my heart like wire. They squeezed until I could barely breathe. I thought about life and death constantly. I thought about what could be done, what should be done, and what should never be done, even when love screams for it. Then they came to us with hope. They called it a trial treatment. I did not understand what that meant. Not really. I heard only the words I wanted to hear. Remission, recovery, future, possibility. They spoke carefully, but I heard them through desperation. I heard them like a drowning person hears someone say there might be land nearby. How could I say no? After years of decline, after so many nights spent watching you suffer, how could I turn away from the first real promise placed in front of me? The men who offered it were not exactly doctors. That should have bothered me more. They wore fine suits and carried official-looking badges. They spoke with confidence and used medical language well enough to sound legitimate. There were forms. So many forms. Consent papers. Liability papers. Warnings written in small print. They told me there were risks, but all treatment had risks. And you were so close to death already? That was what they counted on. That was what I allowed. To them, you were not a person. You were a body near the end. A body they could test. A body that might die anyway, making failure easy to explain. To me, you were everything, and still, I signed. I watched them lay you on a hospital bed in a sterile room that smelled of antiseptic and bleach. They gave me a place behind a two-way mirror. They told me I could observe but not interfere. I remember pressing my hand against the glass as they prepared you, as if you might somehow feel me through it. For days, I watched they injected you with serums. They rubbed oils across your skin that smelled sharp and chemical like acid mixed with superglue. Even from behind the glass, the fumes burned my eyes. They checked your blood. They monitored your heart. They brought in machines I did not recognize and spoke in low voices over clipboards. I wondered if I had only given you a new kind of suffering. But you did not cry out. You did not beg them to stop. You lay there with the same machines keeping you alive, only now I was no longer the one beside you. Your caregivers were men in white coats with large needles and cloth masks. Then you began to improve. At first, I did not trust it. Your fingers moved more. Your breathing became less labored. One machine was removed, then another. You sat up longer. You turned your head without help. Color returned to your face, faint at first, then stronger. I remember the first time you stood. 2 doctors supported you on each side, but your feet touched the floor and you held your own weight for several seconds. I cried so hard I had to sit down. I thought this was it. The miracle. I watched you walk around the room, slowly, carefully, but walking. You answered questions from doctors holding clipboards. You smiled. You seemed tired but alive in a way I had not seen in years. All I wanted was to be allowed inside. I wanted to hold you with healthy arms around me. I wanted to feel your hand on my face without the tremble of illness in your fingers. I wanted to hear you say my name and know that we had beaten the thing that had tried to take you from me. Finally, the day came. They told me I could enter your room. I was nervous. My hands shook so badly I could barely open the door. But when I stepped inside, you looked at me and began to cry. Not from pain, from recognition, from joy. You opened your arms. I ran to you. I fell to my knees in front of you, and you placed your hands in my hair. Your fingers were stronger now. They were no longer only bone wrapped in loose skin. They moved through my hair with life in them. I laid my head in your lap and cried until there was nothing left in me. For a few moments, I believed everything had been worth it. Every signed page, every fear, every risk, every night of suffering. I stood and hugged you tightly. Your body felt warm and solid against mine. I pulled back to look at your face. You were glowing. You looked at me with such love that I thought my heart might split open. Then your forehead sagged. At first, I did not understand what I was seeing. The skin wrinkled deeply, folding over itself like heavy fabric. It slipped downward toward your eyes. Your expression changed, but not in a way a face should change. Your mouth opened. Your jaw popped loudly. Then it kept opening. Your chin stretched downward until it nearly touched your chest. The shape of your face lengthened in a way that made my mind refuse the image for half a second. Then you lunged. You were so fast. Your dentures clamped into my neck and shoulder with terrible force. For one insane moment, I thought you had only bitten me by accident, some seizure, some reaction from the treatment. Then the pain hit. Your jaw opened again and came down harder. The porcelain teeth tore into me like I was raw meat. You ripped away part of my shoulder and the side of my chin. Blood sprayed hot down my chest. I screamed and tried to pull away, but you came after me. You dropped onto all fours. The sight of you moving like that broke something in me deeper than the bite had. You scurried from the bed with animal speed, your limbs striking the floor in sharp, frantic movements. You were not weak anymore. You were not dying anymore. But you were not you anymore either. I stumbled toward the door, slipping in my own blood. I called your name again and again, trying to reach whatever part of you might still be inside. You answered only with a wet, hungry sound. You caught my leg before I reached the door. Your mouth closed around my calf. The pain was white and endless. You tore flesh away in a wet, terrible bite, chewing so frantically that I could hear the meat moving in your mouth. My blood spread across the floor in a dark sheet. I remember tasting iron and thinking, absurdly, that the room still smelled too clean for what was happening inside it. No one came at first. I wondered if they were watching. I wondered if the men behind the mirror were taking notes while you ate me alive. Just before you could bite me again, something shocked your body. A device I never saw sent electricity through you. Your body seized and you collapsed to the floor, twitching. I blacked out from blood loss before I knew whether you were dead. When I woke, I was in a hospital room that looked too much like the rooms where I had spent half my life watching you fade. For one horrifying moment, I wondered if this was my turn, if I was here to die now. A doctor entered with a chart in his hand. Behind him stood one of the men in a suit, watching everything with cold attention. He looked over every paper, every note, every signature, as if the details mattered more than the pieces missing from my body. They gave me paperwork. More paperwork. This time it felt like punishment. And I accepted it. I had signed before without understanding. Now I signed because I understood too well. Whatever you had become, I had helped make it. I had handed you over, I had traded your suffering for this new horror. I was badly damaged, but they patched me together. They closed what they could. They wrapped what remained. They gave me medication and warnings and careful explanations that explained nothing. Then they let me see you. You were in a larger room now. A metal collar was locked around your neck. A heavy chain ran from it to a bolt in the floor, keeping you inside a limited circle. You sat near the center of the room with your feet flat against the floor and your head hanging between your knees. Your face was different, misshapen, sagging, pulled wrong by whatever the treatment had done inside you. Your newly grown gray hair had started falling out in patches. Your skin looked stretched and loose in some places, tight and shiny in others. When you raised your head and looked at me, there was no tenderness in your eyes, only hunger. You looked at me as if I were meat, not a person who had loved you, not the one who washed your tubes and held your hand and prayed over your bed. Meat, flesh, organs, blood, something warm waiting across the room. And still, I stayed. I told myself I had saved you. I told myself your suffering was over. The old sickness was gone. You were alive now, stronger than before. Changed, yes, horribly changed, but alive. Wasn't that what I had wanted? Wasn't that what I had begged the universe for? Life. Now you had life. A monstrous life. A hungry life. A life made by men who saw your dying body and decided it did not matter what happened next. I wish now that I had let time take you gently. I wish I had listened when your eyes begged me to stop. I wish I had understood that not every breath is mercy. But regret does not undo what has been done. So I remained with you. I sat in that room day after day, sometimes against the wall with my knees to my chest, sometimes closer, though never close enough for the chain to let you reach me. I talked to you even when you no longer seemed to understand language. I told you stories from before. I reminded you of the kitchen, the pastries, the songs you liked, the names of people who loved you. You responded with growls, hisses, and the scrape of your teeth. The room smelled awful, fresh copper, spoiled meat, waste, busted intestines. The kind of odor that enters your clothes and hair and follows you even after you leave. But I stopped leaving. I adapted. They brought you meat. At first, they said it was animal meat. Later, I stopped believing that. Some organs are too familiar. Some shapes cannot be mistaken for anything else. You devoured whatever they gave you, face buried in it, blood spreading across your mouth and dripping down your nightgown. The sound was horrible. Wet chewing, teeth clicking, flesh tearing. Sometimes you soiled yourself instead of using the facilities they placed in the room. I cleaned what they allowed me to clean. I learned to live with the smell of blood, urine, feces, and chemical disinfectant blending together into one permanent fog. And I loved you. God help me, I loved you. Even like that, I told myself this was another illness, another cancer, another battle we had to endure together. Maybe this was only one stage of the treatment. Maybe the men in the suits knew how to reverse it. Maybe they were studying you because there was still hope. Maybe one day your eyes would clear and you would know me again. Maybe you would say my name. That was the hope I fed myself. It was thinner than the first hope, more rotten, more desperate. But it was still hope, and I clung to it because without it, all that remained was guilt. I am sorry. I say that to you every day. I am sorry for signing papers I did not understand. I am sorry for ignoring my fear. I am sorry for believing men who saw you as an experiment. I am sorry for making your suffering worse when all I wanted was to end it. Most of all, I am sorry that my love was not wise enough to let you go. But I am here. I will stay here even if you never come back to me. I will stay while you eat, while you scream, while you rot and heal and change into whatever they have made of you. I will stay because I promised never to leave your side. I made that promise when you were sick. I make it again now. If this room becomes our whole world, then I will live in it with you. If the smell of blood and waste is the air you breathe, then I will breathe it too. If you remain a beast forever, then I will love the beast because somewhere inside it, buried under hunger and chemicals and broken humanity, there may still be some small piece of you. And if there is not, then let this be my punishment. Let me sit beside what I made. Let me watch you devour the meat they bring. Let me hear your teeth scrape bone. Let me sleep against the wall while your chain rattles in the dark. Let me die here if that is what it means to stay close to you. Because I wanted you to live. And now you do, and I have to live with what that means. Story 3. I can't even say I was lonely when all of this started. That would make the story too easy. People love simple explanations. Lonely man buys something he shouldn't. Lonely man learns lesson too late. But I wasn't alone. I had a wife. I had children, though they were grown by then and mostly busy with their own lives. I had a house, bills, memories, family photos on the walls, and a woman who had slept beside me for more years than I can count. So no, I was not lonely. But a man can have a family and still feel unwanted. At least, that was what I told myself. Looking back, I know how ugly it sounds. I know what kind of man I was. Maybe I even knew it then and just didn't care enough to stop. But at the time, all I could think about was what I wasn't getting, what I deserved, what marriage used to feel like before life got heavy and boring. My wife and I had been married a long time, long enough that we had stopped surprising each other, long enough that we could have entire conversations without saying anything new. She knew how I drank my coffee. I knew the exact sound she made when she was annoyed, but trying not to start a fight. We had routines, we had history, we had shared responsibilities. What we didn't have anymore was romance. At least, not the kind I wanted. I couldn't even tell you exactly when it stopped. It wasn't one big moment. It didn't happen overnight. There wasn't some dramatic fight where she threw a pillow at me and told me never to touch her again. It just faded. Slowly, quietly, one excuse at a time. I have a headache. I'm tired. I had a long day. Have you been drinking? Can we just go to sleep? After a while, I stopped asking as often. Then I started getting bitter about the fact that I had to ask at all. She said I had become impatient. I said she had become cold. She said I didn't help around the house. I said she didn't appreciate me. She said I smelled like beer. I said she used her own toys while I was still in the room, so who was she to judge? That argument never went anywhere good. Around that time, I had been laid off from work. It had only been a few months, but the days were already starting to blur together. I told people I was looking. Technically, I was. A few applications here, a few calls there. Mostly, though, I sat around the house feeling useless and angry while my wife went to work and came home tired. The kids were grown. The bills were sort of paid. Life was not great, but it was steady enough. Except for that one thing. That one need I convinced myself was ruining me. That was why I bought it. The robot, the ad called it a lifelike companion designed to satisfy every desire. A stupid amount of money for a man without a job. I knew that even as I typed in my card information. But I told myself I deserved something. I told myself it was cheaper than an affair. I told myself no one was getting hurt. I told myself a lot of things. When the box arrived on the porch, I dragged it inside before my wife got home. It was heavier than I expected. The packaging was plain, thank God, but not plain enough to hide what it was once opened. Inside was the machine, wrapped in plastic and foam, lying there with its fake skin and fixed expression. It looked real from a distance, but wrong up close. Too smooth, too still. The eyes didn't focus right. The mouth had that soft, rubbery shape that made it look like it was almost smiling. I should have been embarrassed. Instead, I was excited. My wife came home before I had finished setting it up. The argument was immediate. Of course it was. She stood in the doorway of our bedroom and stared at the thing on the bed. For a few seconds, she didn't speak. Her face went through shock, disgust, hurt, and then something harder than all three. "What is that?" she asked. "You know what it is." Her mouth tightened. "You spent money on that." I told her it was my money too. She reminded me that I wasn't working. I told her maybe if she had cared more about my needs, I wouldn't have needed it. She laughed once, but there was no humor in it. That laugh made me feel small. So I got mean. I said things I shouldn't have said. She did too. By the end of it, she walked out and slammed the door so hard the picture frames in the hall rattled. I thought I had won. That is how stupid I was. For the first few days, the robot was everything the ad promised. It didn't complain. It didn't ask if I had looked for work. It didn't roll its eyes when I opened a beer in the afternoon. It didn't care whether I bought flowers, planned dates, listened to stories, or held a conversation. It did what it was made to do, and I let myself enjoy that. Not because it felt like love. It didn't. But it felt like control. And I think I wanted that more than anything. My wife avoided the bedroom for a while. She slept in the guest room. She barely spoke to me except when necessary. If she had yelled, maybe things would have burned out faster. But her silence made me dig my heels in. I could feel her judging me, and that made me want to prove I didn't need her. Then the robot started changing. At first, it was small, a delay when I gave a command, a slight turn of the head when I walked into the room. Its eyes seemed to track me for a second longer than they should have. Then it began talking outside of its programmed responses. The first time, I thought I had pressed something by accident. "I'm not in the mood right now," it said. I stared at it. Its voice was still artificial, still smooth and slightly flat, but the words were wrong. They were not the kind of thing it had said before. I checked the manual. I restarted it. I looked through the settings. Nothing explained it. The next day, it said, "I'm not feeling well." I almost laughed. Not feeling well? It was a machine. "What, you need a vitamin?" I snapped. It did not answer. After that, it got worse. "I'm so tired. Can we just sleep? Do you have to drink tonight?" I hated it. I hated the way it sounded like her. Not exactly like my wife's voice, but close enough in meaning. Close enough to hit the same nerve. Then it began asking questions. Did you look for a job today? Did you do the dishes? When was the last time you showered? The first time it asked that, I nearly threw it across the room. I started noticing my wife watching, not openly, not standing in the doorway with her arms crossed, just glimpses. Her eye through the crack of the bedroom door, her shape passing slowly down the hall, her shadow pausing outside when the robot said something that made me put my head in my hands. And she looked happier. That was what really got to me. The more frustrated I became, the brighter she seemed. She hummed while cooking. She laughed at things on her phone. She started wearing her favorite perfume again, the one she knew I liked. Sometimes she walked past me in nicer clothes than usual, lipstick on, hair done, pretending not to notice me noticing. She was trying to win. That was how I saw it. Having fun with your toy, she asked one morning. I ignored her. You ready for a real woman again? I told her to leave me alone. Don't you think this is getting embarrassing for both of us? That one stung because I knew it was true. But I refused to give in. I don't know if it was pride, resentment, or just plain stupidity. Maybe all three. I had spent the money. I had started the war. Now I had to stand by it. I told myself I would sleep beside that machine until the end of time if that was what it took to prove a point. But the truth was, I thought about my wife constantly. Even when I was with the robot, I thought about her, her smell, her laugh, her voice when she was not angry, the way she used to look at me years ago, the way she looked in the early days of our marriage when she still believed I was someone worth choosing. That made me angrier, because missing her meant I had not won. Then came the day everything truly went wrong. I had gone to a job interview that afternoon. It did not go well, but it also did not go terribly. I came home tired, irritated, and secretly hoping my wife might ask about it. Maybe she would care. Maybe we would talk like normal people for once. When I walked into the kitchen, she was waiting for me. She was wearing black lingerie. I froze. For a second, old instinct took over. She looked beautiful. She had always been beautiful, even when I was too busy being bitter to admit it. The outfit fit her perfectly. Her hair was done, the perfume hung in the air, sweet and familiar. Normally, that would have been enough. Normally, I would have melted. But then I saw her face. It wasn't hers. Not fully. Something was stretched over it. A crude rubber mask, uneven and lopsided, cut from the face of the robot. I knew it immediately, the fake skin, the artificial lips, the too smooth cheeks. It had been removed badly, torn around the edges, forced over my wife's real features like she was trying to become the thing I had chosen over her. My stomach turned. She started crying. Not quiet crying, not angry crying, deep, broken sobs. I just want you to think I'm pretty, she said. Her voice shook beneath the mask. Isn't this what you want? I stepped back. Please, she whispered, please tell me I'm pretty. The whole thing was horrible. At first, some sick part of me thought it was a game. A final, desperate move. A twisted way to mock me and seduce me at the same time. Maybe I had pushed her to it. Maybe this was my fault. Maybe she was trying to show me how ugly the whole situation had become. I started saying her name. She kept crying. Tell me I'm pretty. I'm sorry, I said. Take that off, please. Just take it off. She reached toward me. I backed away. That was when I decided I had to get rid of the robot. Whatever point I had been trying to make, it was over. This had gone too far. I needed to throw the thing out, smash it, return it, burn it, anything. I needed it out of the house before my marriage became something neither of us could survive. I turned and ran toward the bedroom. Halfway down the hall, I felt something in my gut twist. A warning. I stopped with my hand on the bedroom doorknob. Everything was too quiet. Behind me, my wife's crying had gone soft. In front of me, the bedroom door waited. I don't know why, but I braced myself before opening it. Thank God I did, because when I pushed the door open, all the air left my lungs. The robot was lying on the bed. On its back, its head turned toward the doorway. It was wearing my wife's wedding dress. The white gown spread over the bed in careful folds. The veil covered its face for a moment. The sight was so absurd that my brain refused to understand it. The machine, dressed like a bride, waiting in the room where my wife and I had once slept together. Then I saw the veil moving slightly, not from air, from the thing underneath. My hands shook as I stepped closer. I reached out and lifted the veil. I screamed. My wife's face had been stitched over the robot's head. Not a mask, not rubber. Her face, the skin was stretched unevenly across the artificial skull, sewn into the synthetic material with thick black stitches. The eyes were open, but empty. The lips, her lips, moved over metal and rubber. "Do you think I'm pretty now, honey?" it asked. It used her voice. Not perfectly. There was a mechanical tremor beneath it, a faint metallic buzz. But it was hers. "Now we can finally sleep together again." The machine's lips puckered. "Give me a kiss, honey boy." There was a sharp, metallic clicking sound as the mouth moved in kissing motions. I stumbled backward, hit the dresser, and nearly fell. My hands fumbled for my phone. I dialed 911 as I ran from the room, screaming before the operator even answered. In the kitchen, my wife was on the floor. My real wife. She was crawling toward me, blood smeared behind her in a thick red trail, staining the tile and soaking into the black lingerie. Her face was raw and ruined where the skin had been taken. I could not understand how she was still alive. She clawed her way forward, inch by inch, fingers slipping in her own blood. I fell to my knees beside her. The operator was shouting in my ear, asking what happened, asking for the address, asking if the attacker was still in the house. I couldn't answer properly. All I could do was scream for an ambulance. Her mouth moved, but at first, no sound came out. I leaned close, sobbing so hard I could barely see. "I'm sorry," I said. "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." I don't know if she heard me. I don't know if she understood. I don't know if those words meant anything after what I had done to her, after what I had allowed into our home, after I had spent weeks making her feel like she had been replaced by something bought online in a box. Her body trembled. Then the bedroom door creaked open. Slowly, I looked up. Mechanical footsteps echoed from the hallway. Awkward, uneven, urgent. Step, click, step, click. The operator kept shouting through the phone. My wife exhaled once beneath my hands. Then she went still. I pressed my forehead to what was left of her head and cried into her hair. The footsteps came closer. Then, by some horrible miracle, I heard her voice again behind me. Soft, loving, familiar. "How did the interview go today, honey?" Story 4, this next story isn't really mine to tell. I didn't live it. I didn't witness it. I was never shown proof that it happened the way it was described. All I have is the memory of someone I trusted telling me what happened to him, and the letter he wrote when he was far from home and not acting like himself. I also never got permission to share it with anyone, especially not online. But I don't have any paranormal stories of my own. If I'm being honest, that's part of why I'm writing this now. My older brother, Steve, had the kind of experience people argue about for hours. The kind of thing that makes you question what you think you know, and for years, I kept it to myself. Back in 2001, Steve dropped out of college. It shocked everyone, especially our parents. Steve was the golden child. That's not bitterness talking. It's just the truth. While I spent most of my childhood inside playing video games and avoiding anything that required sweating, Steve was out being a natural athlete and bringing home straight A's like it was nothing. If our parents had a trophy case, Steve would have been the trophy. Every Sunday at church, they'd have him dressed in his best suit, and they would practically parade him around. It always felt like they wanted people to look at him and think, that's good parenting right there. Steve hated church. He didn't make a big show of it, but I could tell. Still, he played along because it made our parents happy and because he was good at being the son they wanted. I guess by the time college came around, he'd hit his limit. One term he came home early, out of nowhere, no warning, no phone call. He just showed up and dropped the news like a bomb. He was quitting school and enlisting in the U.S. military. I remember our mom's face going pale. Our dad got that tight, angry look he saved for moments where he couldn't control the situation with a speech. They tried to talk him out of it. They asked questions like this was a phase they could reason away. Steve didn't budge. As surprising as it was to them, I can't say it shocked me. Steve had always had that edge in him, that stubborn toughness you can't teach. And he'd always watched the same war movies over and over, especially the Vietnam ones. It wasn't like he was obsessed with violence. It was more like he felt pulled towards something bigger than the life our parents had mapped out for him. And he meant it. He actually enlisted. For the next few months, we barely heard from him. We saw him at boot camp graduation, and he looked different. Leaner, harder, like the military had sanded something down inside him and sharpened what was left. That was the last time I expected to see him for a while. Not long after, he was sent overseas. Afghanistan. For most of his tour, the only contact we had with him came through letters. Real paper letters, the kind you don't get much anymore. He'd write about being tired, about missing home, about boredom mixed with fear. He'd tell us he was safe, tell us not to worry. He'd make jokes that didn't quite land, like he was trying to sound like himself. But 5 months in, the letters started coming less often. At first, we blamed the obvious things. Bad mail timing, busy schedules. Maybe he was moving bases, maybe he just didn't have time. Our parents tried not to panic, but you could see it in how our mom checked the mailbox like it might bite her. Then around 9 or 10 months into his tour, I got a letter from him that was addressed directly to me. That wasn't unusual by itself. Steve and I wrote to each other sometimes, but this one felt different the second I held it. It was thicker, like there were multiple sheets inside. The handwriting looked rougher too, like he'd written it fast or with a shaky hand. He also sent a separate letter to our parents around the same time. In theirs, he told them he was safe. And he explained that he hadn't been able to write much because of circumstances. It was short and careful, the kind of letter you write when you know your parents are already scared and you don't want to feed that fear. But the letter he sent me wasn't careful at all. It made my stomach drop. What you're about to read is what Steve wrote to me. I'm not going to pretend I'm doing the honorable thing by sharing it. I'm sharing it because it has haunted me for years, and because I've always wondered if writing it down for someone else to see would make it feel less heavy. Steve never told me I could share it, but if he were here, I'd like to believe he'd understand why I am. His letter started like this. Hey, little bro. Sorry it's been a while since I wrote. Hope you're doing okay in school and not getting your ass kicked, haha. Before you keep reading, I need you to do something for me. Don't give this letter to Mom and Dad, and especially don't tell them what it says. Just tell them exactly what I wrote in my letter to them. I'm writing this to you for 2 reasons. 1, to let you know I'm still alive. 2, because there's something I need to tell you, but before I can, you need to promise me you won't tell Mom and Dad. They wouldn't understand, and I know you're into all that paranormal stuff, aliens and ghosts, so that's why I'm telling you and not them. I repeat, do not tell Mom and Dad. Reading that part, I remember feeling a flash of annoyance, like, what is this? Some dramatic build-up, but the more I read, the less annoyed I felt. Steve didn't do drama. If he sounded like this, it meant something had shaken him. He went on. As you know, our division has been in the Kandahar province for months now. Even though Terry has mostly been forced out of the region, we're still scouting the mountains for any remaining activity. About a week ago, I was part of a team sent into those mountains to look for anything like that. Longo was there too. I don't know if you remember me writing about him. Anyway, we were about halfway up the mountain path when we stopped to rehydrate. We had to be the only people around for miles. There was no sound. Nothing. Just us talking. Then all of a sudden, I get this feeling like we're being watched. I get that feeling a lot, especially when we're out in the open. So I look around just to make sure we're in the clear. I guess it was instinct. But when I look toward a ridge nearby, I see something. It was hot that day, so my eyes had to adjust. But when I see it, I realize it's another person. A man was standing under the ridge, and I didn't know if it was Terry or just a shepherd, so I alert the team for Tango. He wrote that like it was a normal contact, like it was just another moment out there where your survival depends on noticing something first. Then, everybody looks toward the ridge, but nobody sees anything. Carmichael scopes it out, but he doesn't see anything either. The guys think I'm seeing a mirage of a man in the rock formation, so they give me hell for it. But when I look again, I can still see him. No question. He's facing directly at us, maybe 500 feet away. And the man didn't look like Terry. He didn't look like a shepherd either. What I'm seeing is a man in torn pieces of red cloth, covering only half his chest and torso. In his right hand, he's holding a long wooden staff or something, but the end looks sharp like a spearhead. He was wearing something on his head that I first mistook for a turban, but when I really look at it, what I see is a man dressed in torn red garments, holding a wooden spear, and wearing what I can only interpret as an elongated bronze-colored helmet. I tell the team what I'm seeing, but they still don't catch sight of anything. Not even Carmichael. So the team moves on up the mountain path, but when I look back to the ridge one last time, I don't see anything anymore. Anything at all gives me chills. Not because it's a ghost story detail, because of the practical reality of it. A soldier sees a person watching them on a ridge. Everyone else sees nothing. Then it's gone. It could be heat shimmer. It could be distance and light. It could be the mind turning rock shadows into a human shape. If that was all it was, Steve never would have written the rest. He wrote, "We make it back down to base later that day, and I wanted to believe what I saw was just a mirage. But I couldn't. I couldn't because I didn't just see what I saw. I heard it. I heard it, little bro. It spoke. I am not kidding. I heard it speak even from 500 feet away, but it sounded like the voice was directly beside me, whispering into my ear. Maybe I hallucinated that too. I don't know, but I kept repeating the words to myself so I wouldn't forget them. I didn't understand them, but it said something like, infade pese. I remember reading that line and rereading it again and again, trying to pronounce the words in my head. They didn't look like any language I recognized. They looked like someone guessing at sounds. Then Steve continued. I was repeating it so much that evening that another guy, Ethan, overheard and asked why the hell I was saying it. I told him I didn't know what it meant. I assumed it was something in Dari. Ethan said he studied Greek in school, and that's what it sounded like, so I kept repeating it until he could understand. He said, enthade pese in Greek means you will fall here, or, in other words, you will die here. I had to put the letter down when I got to that part. Not because I believed in curses, not because I thought a ghost had spoken Greek in Afghanistan. I stopped because Steve wasn't the kind of person who spooked easily, and he wasn't the kind of person who would invent something like that just to scare me. He wasn't writing like he wanted attention. He was writing like he needed someone to carry a weight with him. He wrote, I know how crazy this sounds, but I swear to God that's what I saw and what I heard. What I saw in those mountains, or what I think I saw, was an ancient Greek soldier. Think about it. Red cloth, bronze helmet, spear. If it was just a mirage or a hallucination, why would I hallucinate an ancient Greek soldier? And more importantly, how could I hear him speak to me in a language I don't know a single word of? Then his letter shifted from, this happened, into something more thoughtful, like he was trying to make sense of it the only way he could. He wrote, do you know what we call Afghanistan over here? We call it the graveyard of empires. We call it that because foreign armies have come and gone here. The Persians, the Mongols, the British, the Russians, and now us. Empires reach here and then they fall. But here's the really interesting part. Afghanistan was once conquered by Alexander the Great. If you're a dumbass and don't know who that is, Alexander the Great was a Macedonian king who conquered his way through the Middle East. Kandahar was among his conquests. I could hear Steve's voice in that line even on the page. That was him, half serious, half trying to keep it light. Like humor could keep fear from getting too close. But the next part wasn't light. He wrote, "If you're wondering why I'm telling you all this, it's because I believe what I saw in those mountains was the ghost of a Greek or Macedonian soldier. A soldier who probably died fighting here, and probably in those very same mountains. If that's what I saw, and if it was real, then it told me I'm going to die here too. Ever since that day, I haven't felt the same. Something tells me what it said will come true, that I won't be making it back home. I pray to God I will, and I'll fight like hell to make it so. But in case I don't, I needed to make peace with it and tell somebody who would understand. You know me, bro. You know I've never believed in ghosts or anything like that. But I know what I saw. I remember staring at that paragraph for a long time. It's hard to explain the feeling of reading your older brother's words and hearing defeat in them. Not surrender. Steve never sounded like he was giving up, but a kind of acceptance that scared me more than fear would have. Then his letter became personal in a way he almost never was. He wrote, "If what the soldier's ghost said is true and I won't be coming back, I just want you to know I love you. I know we had our problems growing up, but you'll always be my little brother no matter what. Don't be such a hard ass to Mom and Dad. I know they can be overbearing, but I've already put them through enough grief these past 2 years. And even though this is asking a lot, at least try to do well in school. I want you to have the best future you can, as lame as that sounds. But who knows, if God is good and merciful. Maybe I'll come home safe after all, and we can both have a good laugh about this. Whatever the future holds for the both of us, I just want you to know I love you now and always." When I finished reading, I just sat there with the paper in my hand staring at the handwriting. I remember noticing small details, where the pen pressed too hard, where a letter trailed off, where a line slanted like his hand had slipped. I wanted to tell myself there was a simple explanation. Heat exhaustion, sleep deprivation, stress, a trick of the light bouncing off rocks, a phrase misheard and then translated into something dramatic by someone who wanted to mess with the new guy. I wanted to believe that badly. But there's a reason I never forgot this letter, even when I forgot other parts of my life from that time. There's a reason it still sits in the back of my mind like an unanswered question. Because Steve wasn't asking me to believe in ghosts. He was asking me to believe that he was scared. And whether what he saw was a mirage, a hallucination, a coincidence, or something older than any of us want to admit, the fear in those words was real. That's the part I can't explain away. Story 5. I think I died yesterday. I know how that sounds. I know it sounds like the kind of thing people say after a bad dream or after waking up in a hospital bed with too many drugs in their system, but I mean it exactly the way I wrote it. I think I died. I was driving too fast on the freeway in the rain, 135 miles an hour, maybe faster. I don't remember checking the speedometer at the end. I only remember the road shining black under my headlights, the wipers moving uselessly across the windshield, and the sound of the tires hissing over water. Then I remember taking a turn too fast. The back of the car slipped. The steering wheel jerked in my hands. For one sharp second, the world became headlights, rain, and the terrible weightless feeling of losing control. I remember flipping. I remember the roof crushing. I remember glass bursting around me like ice. Then there was a sound so loud that it seemed to happen inside my bones. After that, everything went black. But it was not the kind of black I expected, because then I woke up on a beach. Not a hospital bed, not the side of the road, not inside the twisted shell of my car. A beach. I have always loved beaches, or at least I did when I was a kid. Maybe that is why my mind chose that place. Every summer, my family used to drive down to the coast and spend a week there. Cousins, grandparents, plastic coolers full of sandwiches, Cheap beach towels, sunscreen, sand stuck to everything. I remember condos lined up near the shore and the ocean stretching out forever. I remember building sand castles and running on the boardwalk with bare feet. I remember the smell of salt and fried food. Most of my happiest childhood memories happened somewhere near water. So when I opened my eyes and saw sand, my first feeling was not fear. It was confusion. I was lying on my back, staring up at a pale sky. The sun was directly above me, bright but strangely cold. I sat up slowly. My body hurt, but not the way it should have after a crash. There was no blood, no broken glass, no steering wheel pressed into my chest, no paramedics shouting, no rain. A wide, empty beach stretched in every direction. At first, I thought I had been thrown from the car and somehow landed near the ocean. That made no sense, but my brain reached for ordinary explanations because ordinary explanations are what keep you from screaming. I stood up and looked around. The beach was familiar in the way a dream is familiar. It felt close to a memory, but not exactly one. Like someone had taken every beach I had ever visited and copied it badly. There were condos far away in one direction, lined along the edge of my vision. The ocean was on the other side, gray and flat beneath the strange sky, but both were too far away. Not just far, impossible. I started walking toward the ocean first. It looked like maybe a few hundred yards away. I walked for several minutes, then started jogging. The water did not get closer. I turned back. The spot where I had woken up was far behind me. My footprints were there. I had moved. I knew I had moved. But the ocean was still the same impossible distance away. I tested it because panic had not fully reached me yet. I dug a small hole in the sand with my hands, making it deep enough that I would recognize it. Then I faced the ocean and ran as hard as I could. I ran until my legs burned. When I stopped and looked back, the hole was far behind me, but the shoreline was still far ahead. I turned toward the condos and tried the same thing. No matter how long I walked, no matter how fast I ran, the buildings stayed on the horizon. The ocean stayed on the horizon. I was moving across the beach, but I could never reach anything. There was fog, too. Thick, pale fog hovered over the sand. Not heavy enough to hide everything, but enough to make the world feel unfinished. I could hardly see far along the shoreline. The air tasted wet and empty. There were no birds, no waves crashing loudly, no people, no voices, no wind strong enough to explain the way the fog moved around me. I called out, "Hello?" Nothing answered. I shouted louder, "Is anyone there?" Still nothing. I screamed until my throat burned. No one came. That was when fear began to settle in. Not fast, not like a sudden shock. It came slowly, like water rising in a locked room. At first, I told myself this had to be a dream. Then I told myself I was unconscious. Maybe in a hospital. Maybe my brain was creating this place while doctors worked on me. Maybe if I waited long enough, I would wake up. So I waited. Then I walked. Then I ran. Then I screamed again. Time did not behave properly there. The sun did not move the way it should. It stayed above me for what felt like hours, then dimmed, then somehow returned to the same place again. I could not tell if a day had passed or if the beach simply wanted me to think one had. Hunger never came, but thirst did. Fatigue did too. My legs ached, my throat became raw, my skin felt dry and tight from the salt in the air. Emotion felt wrong there. I was scared, but not the way I should have been. I was not frantic all the time. I was not angry either. Mostly I felt hopeless. A deep, heavy hopelessness, like the beach allowed only that one emotion and pushed everything else away. The longer I stayed there, the more I understood what the place wanted. It wanted me to stop. It wanted me to lie down in the sand and give up, to become another silent thing on that endless shore. Maybe the fog was full of people who had already done that. Maybe the sand itself was made from them, ground down into tiny pieces and spread beneath the same cold sun. I tried not to think about that, but after what felt like a full day, I broke. My legs would not carry me anymore. My throat hurt too much to scream. The ocean was still far away. The condos were still far away. Nothing had changed except me. I fell to my knees in the sand. For a while, I only stared into the fog. Then I whispered, "I give up." My voice was almost gone. You win. At first, I thought the shape in the fog was another hallucination. It appeared slowly, faint at first, then clearer. A person walking toward me across the sand. My heart began to pound. I wanted to feel relief. I wanted to think someone had finally come. But something about the figure was wrong before I could see it clearly. Then a voice spoke. "We're going to play a game." The voice did not simply come from the figure. It came from everywhere. It came from the sky, the sand, the ocean, the fog. And inside my own chest, it shook the beach beneath me. Far away, the ocean rippled as if the sound had touched it. I scrambled to my feet. "Who the hell are you?" I shouted. The figure stopped in front of me. "Death." I turned to run. Before I could take a step, he was in front of me again. I did not even see him move. He raised the back of his hand and struck me across the face. The pain was unreal. I hit the sand hard, and for a moment I thought every bone in my body had shattered. The pain moved through me in waves, bright and electric, worse than anything I had felt during the crash. I curled around it, clutching my face, trying to breathe. That was when I saw him clearly. He looked like me, not similar, exactly like me. Same face, same eyes, same scar near my chin from falling off a bike when I was 12. Same tiny ingrown hair under my nose that I had noticed in the mirror the morning before the crash. Same body, same clothes, same everything. It was like staring at myself if my reflection had learned to hate me. "Who are?" I started. He waved one hand in front of my face. My breath disappeared. Not blocked, not choked. Gone. My lungs simply stopped working. I gagged and grabbed my throat. I tried to suck in air, but nothing entered. My chest tightened. My lungs burned. I opened my mouth to scream, but no sound came out. The man who looked like me watched calmly. "We're going to play a game for your soul," he said. I collapsed into the sand, fighting uselessly for air. "If you win, you may enter the pearly gates above." He kicked me when I tried to rise. I fell back to my knees, still unable to breathe. "If you lose, your soul is mine. You will stay with me in torment for eternity." My vision began to darken at the edges. The pressure in my head built until I thought my skull would split. Then he waved his hand again. Air rushed into my lungs. I gasped so hard I nearly vomited. I sucked in breath after breath, crying without meaning to, pressing my hands into the sand like I was afraid the air might be taken again. "Do you understand the terms of our game?" he asked. "Why?" I choked out. "Why are you doing this?" His expression hardened. Silence. The word exploded through the world. Pain erupted from every part of me at once. Not my skin, not my bones. Deeper than that, every atom of my body screamed. I fell onto my back, howling. The ocean rose in the distance, waves taller than buildings crashing against a shoreline I could never reach. The condos trembled and began to crumble under the weight of his voice. Then, just as suddenly, everything went quiet. He leaned over me and spoke softly. "Do you understand?" I forced myself to kneel. "Yes," I said quickly. "Yes, I understand." He smiled. Then he took my breath again. I clutched at my chest, but this time I did not try to speak. "This beach contains hundreds of thousands of millions of tons of sand just within eyesight," he said, walking slowly around me. "I want you to count every single grain of sand that exists on this beach." I stared at him through the agony. It was impossible. He knew it was impossible. That was the point. "Of course," he continued, "you may give up at any time. But giving up means forfeiting the game. And if you forfeit, I win. You may take as much time as you need." You may guess as many times as you want. We have eternity, after all." Then he began to laugh. It started as a chuckle. Then it grew louder, sharper, wider, until it became manic laughter that bounced across the empty beach and returned from every direction. "Welcome to paradise," he said. Then he vanished into mist. The hold on my lungs disappeared, and I collapsed forward, breathing hard. For a while, I did nothing. I just knelt in the sand, shaking, staring at the endless beach before me. Then I started counting. I don't know why I began so quickly. I don't remember deciding there was no other option. Maybe fear made the choice for me. Maybe some part of me understood that running was useless and begging would only bring more pain. I gathered grains one by one at first. 1, 2, 3, 4. It was ridiculous, insane. But I kept going. Soon I changed methods. I dug sections, I made piles, I tried to estimate by volume, then panicked because guessing wrong might mean losing. So I started over. Then I started over again. I made grids in the sand using my fingers. I counted piles until the numbers grew too large to hold cleanly in my head. Days passed, or years, or seconds. Time became meaningless. I remember fragments more than a clear sequence. My knees buried in sand. My fingernails cracked and bleeding. Towers of counted sand piled higher than my body, holes spreading behind me like wounds in the beach. My own voice whispering numbers until the words stopped sounding like language. I remember forgetting why I was counting, then remembering and screaming. I remember trying to sleep and waking up with the same number still burning in my head. I remember death returning sometimes, wearing my face asking if I wanted to guess. I remember refusing. I remember guessing once and being wrong. The punishment for a wrong guess was worse than the crash. Worse than suffocation, worse than anything I can describe. After that, I counted more carefully. The last number I remember from that place was impossible. 10,289,798,543. 10,289,798,543. I don't know if that was the final number. I don't know if I guessed. I don't know if I won. The next thing I remember, I woke up in the back of an ambulance. People were shouting around me, lights flashed red and white against the ceiling. Someone was pressing something to my chest. Someone else was telling me to stay with them. Rain hammered against metal. My body hurt so badly that for a moment I almost wanted the beach back. Almost. They told me later that I had been clinically dead for around 2 seconds. 2 seconds. I spent 163 years on that beach. I know that sounds impossible. I know what anyone would say. It was a near-death hallucination. It was a dream. It was my brain firing randomly as it shut down. It was trauma, drugs, lack of oxygen, anesthesia, memory distortion. I would believe that too. I want to believe that. But this morning, after the surgeries, after the casts and stitches and tubes, after waking up again in a hospital bed and being told how lucky I was, I found sand in my shoes. Real sand. Not dirt from the crash site, not tiny rocks. Sand. Fine, pale beach sand packed deep into the shoes I had been wearing when they cut me out of the car. The nurse said maybe it came from the road, maybe from the ambulance floor, maybe from somewhere else. She didn't understand. I do. I know where it came from. And now I cannot stop thinking about what happens next. Because the crash did not happen by accident. I was driving that fast for a reason. There's cancer in my brain. They found it months ago. They told me it was aggressive. They told me the treatments might slow it down, but not stop it. They told me I had time, but not much. I had been living with that knowledge like a loaded gun inside my skull. Yesterday, I drove into the rain because I couldn't carry it anymore. I thought death would be an ending. I thought if there was anything after, maybe it would be peace. Maybe darkness. Maybe nothing. I was ready for nothing. But now I know there is a beach. I know there is a thing wearing my face. I know it waits with games that cannot be won and time that stretches 2 seconds into centuries. The doctors say I survived the crash. They say I am lucky. They say there will be more surgeries, more treatment, more time. But time does not feel like a gift anymore. It feels like a delay. Because soon, maybe in days, maybe weeks, if I am unlucky enough to last that long, the cancer will do what the crash failed to do, and when everything goes black again, I am terrified I will open my eyes on that empty shore. The sun will be above me, the ocean will be too far away, the condos will sit at the edge of the fog, and someone who looks exactly like me will step out of the mist, smiling, ready to start the next game. Story 6. He needed an excuse to go to the store. That was the first lie he told himself that night. He had plenty of food at home. Too much, honestly. The pantry was full of half-open snack bags, instant noodles, cereal, crackers, old cans of soup, and 3 different kinds of chips he had bought during previous late-night cravings and forgotten about the next day. The freezer had food too. Cheap meals, frozen burritos, a bag of fries, some chicken strips, enough to keep him from needing to leave the house. But he wanted something specific, a supreme tombstone pizza, and butter. The butter was technically the real reason, or at least the reason that sounded responsible in his head. He had taken a few edibles around 8:30 that evening, coming down from a long, hazy day spent doing almost nothing. They were his last few, which should have bothered him more than it did. Payday was less than a week away, and until then, he had the stuff to make more at home. He had the mix. He had the THC distillate. He had the little tray he always used. The only thing missing was butter. The instructions on the box said he could use vegetable oil, but he refused. He had strong feelings about that. He believed the fat content in melted butter bonded better with the distillate. He had explained this theory to people before, usually while high, usually to someone who had stopped listening halfway through. So at 9:15 p.m., after pacing around his small mobile home and opening the pantry 3 separate times, he finally decided to walk to the store. It would be a 30-minute round trip, 15 minutes there, 15 minutes back. Easy. He slipped his feet into his bluey slippers, patted his pocket to make sure his smoke shop Delta 9 vape was there, and stepped outside into the thick Virginia summer night. The air was wet and heavy. It clung to his skin the second he left the cool air of the trailer. Mosquitoes whined around him almost immediately, finding the exposed skin on his arms and legs like they had been waiting for him. He slapped one on his calf and started walking faster. The neighborhood was mostly quiet. A few porch lights glowed yellow. Somewhere far off, a dog barked twice and stopped. Beyond the rows of mobile homes and small houses, he could hear the nearby highway, cars passing in soft waves of sound. He put in his earbuds and started down the street. At first, the walk felt normal. The edibles had begun to settle into him, not too hard yet, just enough to make the air feel thicker and the lights brighter. The road ahead shimmered in the heat. His slippers slapped softly against the pavement. Then he passed under the first street lamp. That was when he thought he saw something. He slowed. Between 2 dark shapes near the edge of a yard where the light from the street lamp failed to fully reach, someone seemed to be standing. He took out one earbud. The night became clearer. Crickets, distant cars, the buzz of insects around the light above him. For a second, he told himself it was a trash can or a bush or one of those plastic lawn decorations people left out too long. But as he got closer, the shape became a woman. She stood partly hidden in the dark near the trees and the edge of a fence. He could not see her clearly, only the outline of her body, the pale shape of her face, and the stillness of her posture. Then he heard the sound. At first, he thought it was some machine nearby. Maybe a printer, maybe an old fan, maybe one of those little electric boxes that hum on the side of houses, buzzing, chirping, clicking, whirring. The sounds repeated in a loop, perfectly timed, too clean to be random. As he passed her, maybe 15 feet away. She turned her eyes toward him. Not her head. Just her eyes. That was when he realized the sound was coming from her. The mechanical buzzing and chirping was not a machine. It was a voice. Her voice. She was imitating something mechanical with her mouth, repeating the same pattern over and over again with perfect rhythm. His skin prickled. He looked forward and picked up his pace. "Maybe I'm just higher than I think," he muttered. That explanation helped for about 3 seconds. He kept walking, forcing himself not to look back too soon. He passed through the glow of the next street lamp, then finally glanced over his shoulder. She was still there, about 25 feet behind him now, standing in the same place, not moving. He let out a breath and kept going. At the next light, he looked back again. Still nothing. She had not moved, at least not that he could tell. She remained near the same dark patch between the fence and the trees, watching. "Huh," he said under his breath. "Weird." He put his earbud back in. The music helped. It made the night feel less open, less listening. He walked farther down the street, telling himself he was being stupid. People stood outside at night sometimes. People made weird noises. Drugs made things feel worse than they were. By the time he reached the last street lamp on his block, he was almost ready to laugh about it. Then he looked back one more time. The woman was walking toward him. Not slowly, not running either. She moved with a brisk, steady confidence that made his stomach drop. She was not following the road. She was cutting straight through lawns and dark driveways, moving in a direct line toward him. Like she had measured the shortest path, he started walking faster. She kept coming. He started jogging. She matched him. Then he ran. His slippers slapped loudly against the pavement. His lungs complained almost immediately. He was not in shape. He knew that before this moment, but now his body was reminding him with cruelty. His ankles hurt. His thighs tightened. His chest burned. He looked back once. She was closer. "Holy shit," he gasped. Holy shit, that was the only thing keeping him from turning around and trying to make it back. The Family Dollar was up ahead, past the small vacant sheriff deputy building and a couple of closed businesses. It had lights, cameras, people. At least one employee would be there. He just needed to get inside. He rounded the sheriff deputy building, passing under stronger streetlights now. The neighborhood ended behind him. The sidewalk ran beside the sparse highway, where cars passed every so often, their headlights bright and brief. He looked back. The woman was not visible. For one blessed second, relief loosened his chest. He slowed slightly, wheezing. His legs ached. His joints felt loose and hot. Cramps nipped at his calves. He bent forward a little as he moved, trying to breathe without stopping completely. Then he saw them. Across the road to his left, 2 figures were keeping pace with him. They moved along the opposite sidewalk, matching his speed exactly. Both of them were watching him. He could not see their faces clearly at first, but he saw something on their heads, something silvery and dirty. It covered their skulls and came down over the top halves of their faces, stopping just above their mouths. Their eyes were exposed. Their eyes were fixed on him. Something about their faces was wrong. They looked angry. Too angry. Their skin was flushed a deep red, like they had been exerting themselves for hours. Like fever, like heat stroke. Their mouths were clenched tight. Predators, he thought suddenly. The word came into his mind with animal certainty. Some predators chased from behind. Others moved to the sides and blocked the exits. He found more speed. His breath tore in and out of him. He crossed the last patch of grass, stumbled over the curb, and nearly fell as he reached the Family Dollar parking lot. The glass doors were ahead, glowing with white fluorescent light. He threw himself through them. The doors slid open. Cold air hit his face. Light swallowed him. He was inside. For a moment, relief bloomed through his whole body. It was so strong that his knees almost gave out. He stood near the entrance, bent over, hands on his thighs, trying to drag air into his lungs. The store was small and almost empty. Thin aisles, bright lights, cheap seasonal decorations near the front, the smell of floor cleaner, plastic and old cardboard. Dude? An employee stood near the front counter staring at him with concern. They were small, with a name tag that said Grenda. Dude, Grenda said again. You good? He turned and looked out through the glass doors. The parking lot was empty. No woman. No two figures across the road. No silvery head coverings. No one at all. He looked back at Grenda. Yeah, he said, though his voice sounded thin. Yeah, I think. Sorry. Grenda kept watching him for a second. He grabbed a basket because that felt like something a normal person would do, then moved deeper into the store. His hands were shaking. The aisles felt like a maze now. Thin rows of shelves stacked with bright packaging and dollar store junk. He tried to act normal. Chips, candy, drinks. He grabbed a few things without thinking too hard. Pork rinds, a case of Kool-Aid, a jar of pickled jalapenos. He kept glancing over his shoulder. Nothing. The refrigerator section was at the back. That was what he had come for. Pizza and butter. If he bought those things, then the trip had been real. Normal. He could go home and convince himself the woman had been some high hallucination. The figures across the road just shadows or teenagers in weird helmets. Before entering the cold aisle, he stopped and looked both ways like he was about to cross the street. Then he stepped in. The refrigerator lights were painfully bright. The cold air rolled over his sweaty skin and made him shiver. As he turned toward the frozen pizzas, he bumped into an older woman browsing nearby. Oop, he said quickly. Sorry, ma'am. She moved her mouth in response, but he had put his earbud back in and couldn't hear her. He nodded awkwardly and crouched near the freezer door, scanning the boxes. Pepperoni, cheese, 4 meat, supreme. There it was. He reached for it. His earbud died. The music cut out instantly, and in the sudden quiet, he heard the sound again. Buzzing, clicking, whirring, chirping. A human voice pretending to be a machine. He fell backward onto his ass at the end of the aisle. Fully lit by the fluorescent freezer lights, stood the woman. Now he could see her clearly. She looked like she had once had thick blonde hair, though most of it was hidden or ripped away. Her skin was bright pink, almost red, like a lobster pulled from boiling water. She looked flushed from effort, but she was not breathing. Her chest did not rise, her nostrils did not flare. She simply stood there, wide enough to block most of the aisle, built heavy and solid like a bulldog. Her lips were pulled back in a sneer. Her teeth were rotten and clenched together so hard that the muscles in her jaw trembled. But the worst part was what covered her head. From the top of her skull down to the tip of her nose, her head was wrapped in filthy duct tape. The tape was layered unevenly, gray and dark with grime and blood. Under it, exposed wires twisted across her scalp. Small blinking lights pulsed through gaps in the tape. Copper shavings and bits of circuit board caught the freezer light. Only her eyes were uncovered. They bulged from the sockets like overfilled water balloons squeezed through a narrow opening. Blood leaked from around them, running down from the edges of the duct tape holes. More blood streamed from beneath the tape around her cheeks and ears, dripping down her flushed face and onto her neck. The mechanical sounds continued, but now he could see her mouth making them. Her lips barely moved. Her teeth stayed clenched. The sounds came from somewhere deep in her throat, strained and looping, as if her vocal cords had been worn raw but forced to keep imitating a machine anyway. He scrambled backward. "Lady," he gasped. The older customer looked toward him. "What?" He pointed down the aisle. "What is that?" She followed his gaze, squinting toward the freezer section. "What?" "Look," he said, voice cracking. "Look at what?" He turned to her in disbelief. "You don't see her." The older woman looked frightened now, but not at the creature, at him. "See who, young man?" He looked back. The woman had moved closer. She was only about 5 feet away. He had not seen her take a step. At this distance, he noticed more details. A short antenna poked from the top of her taped skull. 2 pulsing buttons sat near her left temple. Her eyes were wet and stretched, ready to burst. Yet they never left him. He dropped the basket. Snacks spilled across the floor. Then he ran. Grenda shouted something as he tore through the store, but he didn't stop. He shoved through the glass doors and burst into the night. His hand fumbled for his phone as he sprinted across the parking lot. He tried to call 911. The phone was dead. No, 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 he wheezed. He did not look back. But he heard her behind him. The footsteps hit the pavement with exact rhythm. Not human rhythm, too steady, too precise, no hesitation, no stumble, no change in breath because there was no breath. Smack, 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 the mechanical voice loop followed him through the dark. Buzz, click, whir, chirp. He ran harder than he had ever run in his life. A story from childhood flashed into his mind for no reason. Sodom and Gomorrah. The man and his family being told not to look back. The wife looking anyway and turning into salt. He had not thought about that story in years, but now it filled his head with terrible urgency. Do not look back. Whatever happens, do not look back. He kept his eyes forward and pumped his legs. The highway lights blurred. The closed stores passed on his right. The small sheriff deputy building came and went. Then he was back near the neighborhood. At times, he gained distance. At times, the footsteps came so close he thought he could feel fingers brushing the back of his shirt. Once, he heard more footsteps join hers. Maybe the 2 figures from across the road? Maybe more. A pack. He could not tell over the hammering of his own heart. The entire time, the sounds continued behind him. The whirring, puffing, beeping, buzzing. Her voice strained to keep the loop going. It cracked in places. It rasped. But it did not stop. The walk that usually took 15 minutes took far less on the way back, though it felt endless. By the time he reached his trailer, his vision was spotted with black. His chest burned. His legs felt like torn rubber bands. His bluey slippers thumped onto the wooden porch. He grabbed the door handle, twisted, and yanked with everything he had. Behind him, the machine voice was close. Yards away, maybe closer. He threw himself inside and slammed the metal door shut. The impact shook the trailer. He locked it and collapsed to his knees, making a sound that was half sob and half wheeze. His whole body trembled. Sweat ran down his face. Bile rose in his throat. He crawled to the window and yanked the blinds shut. Then the next window. Then the next. Only after every blind was closed did he let himself crawl to the couch. He sat there shaking, trying to plug his phone into the charger with fingers that would not work properly. The charger finally clicked into place. The screen stayed black for a moment. Then, just as the charging symbol appeared, he heard something beneath the kitchen table. A soft mechanical chirp. He turned his head slowly. Someone was under the table. That night, his neighbor reported hearing him run into the trailer. A few minutes later, the screaming started. It was short. Not because it wasn't terrible. Because it ended too quickly. When the police arrived, they found the front door locked from the inside. The blinds were closed. The groceries were not there because he had left them in the store. His phone was plugged in beside the couch. On the floor near the kitchen table, they found the top of his skull. The scalp was still attached. Beneath it was a puddle of bloody spinal fluid. "What do you think, Detective?" one of the officers asked while yellow caution tape was stretched across the trailer door. The detective didn't answer right away. He walked into the kitchen, where the microwave door hung slightly open. Inside was a tray of brownies. He picked one up, smelled it, and frowned. Then he sighed. "It's these damn kids and their weed," he said. "It's always these damn kids and their weed." Story 7. I used to think I was funny. Not just kind of funny. Not the class clown who made a joke once in a while and got detention for talking too much. I was the queen of the high school hallways. At 14, I measured my life in reactions. Not normal laughter, not the warm kind that happens between friends when someone says something clever. I wanted the sharp laughter, the shocked laughter, the kind that burst out of people when they realized too late that their locker had been filled with 300 ping pong balls, or that the seat they had just dropped into had a whoopee cushion taped underneath it. That was my world. Whoopee cushions, itching powder, fake spiders, tripwires made from fishing line, plastic wrap across doorways. Nothing too dangerous, at least not in the beginning. I was not trying to hurt anyone. I just wanted everyone to look at me. I wanted people to say my name when they talked about what happened. I wanted teachers to sigh before they even turned around because they already knew it was probably me. Rachel. Always Rachel. Some kids liked me for it. Some hated me. Most were somewhere in the middle. They laughed when the prank was on someone else and got angry when it was on them. That was fair, I guess. My parents called it a phase. My older sister, Emily, called it exhausting. You're going to take it too far one day, she told me more than once. I always rolled my eyes. Relax. It's just a joke. It's just a joke. I said it so often that I stopped hearing how ugly it sounded. I met him at the park behind Maple Street, the one with the rusted swing set and the old basketball court nobody used anymore because the ground had cracked so badly from tree roots. It was almost dark, and I was sitting on a bench preparing my next masterpiece, a salt shaker gag. Simple, but beautiful. I had carefully loosened the top so that when someone tried to use it in the cafeteria, the entire thing would dump out onto their food. Not my greatest work, but reliable. A classic. That was when I noticed the shadow. At first, I thought someone was standing under the trees. Then the shadow moved wrong. Not like a person stepping forward. More like the darkness itself stretched and unfolded. A man came out from behind the trunk of an old oak. He was tall. Too tall, maybe. His limbs were long and thin, but not in a sickly way. More like they had been pulled slightly past where human limbs were supposed to stop. His coat hung loosely from his narrow shoulders. His fingers twitched at his sides as if they were impatient. But the first thing I really noticed was his smile. It was wide. Too wide. A smile that looked like it had been drawn across his face by someone who had heard of smiling but had never seen it done properly. His eyes sparkled in the dim light. Not beautifully. Like broken glass. "You're the girl who likes tricks," he said. I should have been scared. I know that now. But I was 14, arrogant, and more curious than careful. "Who are you?" I asked. He bowed, slow and dramatic, one hand pressed to his chest. "The prank master." I laughed. I thought he was some weird street performer. Maybe a magician. Maybe one of those strange adults who hang around parks because nobody has told them how creepy they seem. "The prank master?" I repeated. "That's stupid." His smile widened. I have been called worse by better. I stood and grabbed my backpack. "Well, I'm leaving. You don't want to learn the ultimate prank." That stopped me. He knew it would. I looked back. The prank master tilted his head, watching me with those glittering eyes. "The kind of prank no one forgets," he said. "The kind people speak of for years. The kind that changes someone forever." At 14, that sounded like greatness. At 14, I did not understand that changing someone forever is not always an achievement. Sometimes it is a crime. The lessons started slowly. He never came to my house. He never appeared at school. He met me in strange places after sunset, under flickering streetlights behind closed stores, in the alley near the old movie theater, in the empty park where the swings creaked even when there was no wind. At first, what he taught me felt exciting. He showed me how to pick cheap locks with a paperclip and patience. He showed me how to move without making sound, how to hide in shadows, how to know where security cameras were pointed, how to leave no fingerprints on smooth surfaces. He made it feel like magic, like I was being accepted into a secret order of tricksters. He never rushed. He praised me when I learned quickly. He clapped his long fingers together when I came up with ideas on my own. He called me talented, gifted, a natural. I had never cared much about adults being proud of me. But his praise felt different. It felt like being chosen. The pranks changed, too. At first, they were still mostly harmless. He helped me fill a teacher's desk drawers with fake worms. He showed me how to rig a locker so a rubber rat dropped out when it opened. He taught me timing, misdirection, and presentation. A prank is a performance, he told me. The setup is the stage. The victim is the audience. Fear is the applause. I laughed the first time he said that. Later, I would realize he was not joking. The first time someone got hurt, it was Mr. Calhoun from 3 houses down. He was not a bad man. Quiet, middle-aged, lived alone, always watered his lawn at exactly 7 in the morning. I had never spoken to him much, but the prank master said that made him perfect. He needs surprise in his life, he said. The plan was supposed to scare him, just scare him. We rigged a motion sensor near his back gate. When he walked through, a shape would drop from the tree above. A fake body, stuffed clothes, a mask, nothing more. I asked if it was too much. The prank master looked disappointed. "Rachel," he said softly, "greatness does not come from small courage." So I helped. The next morning, Mr. Calhoun opened his gate. He screamed. Then he fell backward down the small concrete steps beside his porch. The sound his head made when it hit the edge of the walkway was not funny, not even for a second. I froze behind the fence. The prank master stood beside me, half hidden in the bushes, his long fingers twitching with delight. Mr. Calhoun lay on the ground, groaning, one arm bent beneath him at an unnatural angle. Blood spread through his gray hair. I started crying. "We need to call someone," I said. The prank master watched the injured man like he was admiring artwork. "The more they fear, the more I thrive," he whispered. His voice had changed. It sounded like stones grinding together. True comedy requires a sacrifice of safety. That was the moment I understood. He was not a teacher. He was not a trickster. He was not some strange man with a love of jokes. He was a predator. The next time we met, I told him I was done. I said it in the park, standing beneath the same oak where I first saw him. "I'm not helping you anymore." I told him that wasn't funny. Mr. Calhoun could have died. His smile stayed in place. "Could have," he said. "Did not. That's not the point." "Then what is the point, Rachel?" "That you hurt people." He leaned toward me. His face seemed longer than before. His smile stretched deeper into his cheeks. "So did you." I backed away. I didn't know that would happen. "That is what makes it funny." I told him he was cruel. For the first time, his smile disappeared. Not completely. It slipped, just enough for me to see something underneath it. Something old, something hungry. Something that did not understand kindness, except as another thing to break. "You can leave," he said. "Of course you can, but a master always finishes what he starts." My throat went dry. "What does that mean?" "The final act of your training has already begun," he said. "You just haven't noticed the wires yet." I ran home. I bolted every window. I checked the locks on every door. I pulled my curtains shut and shoved a chair under my bedroom doorknob, even though my parents yelled at me for being dramatic. For days, I expected something to happen. A bucket over a door. A fake spider in my bed. A voice outside my window. Something. But nothing happened. That was the worst part. The prank master had made me afraid of nothing. After a while, I convinced myself that was the final act. Fear itself. A mind game. Maybe he was trying to show me what it felt like to be on the other side. I stopped going to the park. I stopped planning pranks. I threw away most of my supplies. Emily noticed. She came into my room one evening and leaned against the doorframe. "You okay?" "Fine," I said. "You haven't put shaving cream in anyone's shoes all week. Should I call a doctor?" I almost smiled. Almost. "I'm just done with that stuff." She studied me for a while. "Good," she said. "Honestly, Rach, good." Then she sat beside me on the bed. Emily was 17 then. She was everything I wasn't. Calm, responsible, pretty without trying. The kind of person teachers trusted and parents compared their kids to. We fought like sisters fight. But she was never cruel to me. She touched my shoulder. You know, you can tell me if something happened. For a second, I almost did. I almost told her about the man in the park with the too wide smile and the glass eyes. I almost told her about Mr. Calhoun and the way the prank master enjoyed his pain, but I imagined her face, the disbelief, the worry, the word therapist. So I said nothing. That was the first choice I would spend the rest of my life regretting. The fire happened 3 nights later. I woke up to the smell of smoke. At first, I thought it was a dream. Then the fire alarm started screaming. I opened my bedroom door and saw the hallway glowing orange. Heat hit my face so hard I stumbled back. Everything after that is broken in my memory. My mother shouting, my father coughing, smoke rolling across the ceiling, the sound of glass breaking, the stairs burning, Emily's bedroom door upstairs. I remember screaming her name. I remember my father dragging me toward the front door while I fought him. I remember seeing something on the landing through the smoke. A tall shape, too thin, too still. For 1 second between the flames, I saw the prank master standing at the top of the stairs. He lifted one long hand and waved. Then the ceiling groaned and my father pulled me outside. Emily did not make it out. The fire department came. The neighbors gathered. My mother collapsed in the yard. My father stood barefoot on the wet grass, staring at the house as firefighters dragged hoses across the lawn. I screamed until my throat stopped working. Later, they found the cause. Electrical wiring had been altered. Gas lines had been tampered with. The investigators said the setup looked amateur but intentional, like something made by a child trying to build a prank device without understanding what would happen. Then they found my journals. That was the second choice I regretted. I had written everything down for years. Ideas, diagrams, sketches, plans, half-finished concepts, gags I never used, tricks I wanted to try someday. The prank master had known that. Of course he had. They found the tools, too. Special tools he had given me. Lockpicks, wire cutters, strange little metal devices I never fully understood. They were hidden under my bed in a box I did not remember putting there. Each tool had my name scratched into it. Rachel, Rachel, Rachel. To the police, it was obvious. A disturbed teenage girl obsessed with pranks had rigged something dangerous in her own house. Maybe she wanted attention. Maybe she made a mistake. My parents tried to defend me at first. Then the evidence kept piling up. My journals, the tools, Mr. Calhoun's accident, teachers talking about my history of pranks, classmates telling stories, a locker filled with ping-pong balls, itching powder in a gym uniform, fake blood in a bathroom sink, plastic wrap across a doorway. Suddenly, none of it sounded harmless anymore. Suddenly, everything I had ever done became proof that I was capable of something worse. I told them about the prank master. At first, I said it calmly. Then I begged. Then I screamed. No one believed me. Why would they? There were no fingerprints that were not mine. No camera footage. No strange man in the park. No proof that anything had existed except my obsession and my sister's body. The trial did not feel real. I was too young for some things and old enough for others. People used words like evaluation, instability, delusion, manslaughter, intent, diminished responsibility. In the end, they did not send me to prison. They sent me somewhere else. A place with locked doors, white walls, reinforced glass, and staff who speak gently even when they are afraid of you. I have been here ever since. Every morning, they bring me medication in a little paper cup. Every morning, the answer is in their eyes, pity. That is worse than anger. Anger means someone thinks you chose evil. Pity means they think the evil came from inside your own broken mind. I tell them the prank master did it. I tell them he is real. I tell them he used me. I tell them he killed Emily. Sometimes I shout until my throat burns. Sometimes I whisper because I am too tired to shout. It makes no difference. They write things down. They adjust medication. They ask if I can describe him again. Too tall, long fingers, smile too wide, eyes like broken glass. They nod as if the details proved the sickness instead of the truth. For years, nothing happened. That almost broke me more than anything. No signs, no whispers, no laughter in the dark, no proof. Just time, so much time. I started wondering if maybe I had imagined him. Maybe grief and guilt had created the prank master because the truth was too heavy. Maybe I really had done something terrible and buried the memory so deep that only a monster could carry it for me. Then yesterday, I woke up and found a balloon tied to the leg of my bed. Small, colorful, bright yellow. It bobbed gently in the air beside the mattress. That should have been impossible. No outside items are allowed in my room. Everything is checked. Every person who enters is watched. Even paper clips are counted. But there it was, a cheerful little balloon tied with red string. My whole body went cold. Written on the rubber in black ink was a message. The handwriting was tall and thin and ugly. I knew it immediately. Your performance was legendary, Rachel. Unfortunately, it is time for me to move on. There is a girl 3 towns over who thinks she is the new queen of pranks. I think it is time I introduce myself. It was fun while it lasted. I hope you enjoyed my pranks. Sincerely, the Prank Master. I read it again and again until the letters blurred. Then I started screaming. The staff came running. They found me on the floor, pointing at the bed, sobbing and trying to explain that he had been here, that he had come into my locked room, that he had left proof. But by the time they looked, the balloon was gone. Of course it was. Only the red string remained tied to the bed leg. They said I must have hidden it. They said stress can trigger episodes. They said we would discuss it in therapy. I have not slept since, because now I know 2 things. First, I was never crazy. Second, he is done with me. That should make me feel free. It does not, because somewhere out there, 3 towns over, there is a girl who thinks she is funny. Maybe she fills lockers with ping pong balls. Maybe she puts fake spiders in desks. Maybe she thinks laughter is worth any amount of embarrassment. Maybe she tells people it is just a joke. And maybe tonight, while she is planning her next prank under a flickering streetlight, something too tall will step out from behind a tree. Maybe he will smile at her with glass-bright eyes. Maybe he will bow and tell her his name. And maybe she will be young enough, proud enough, and lonely enough to listen. I wish I could warn her. I wish I could tell her that the first rule of a prank is knowing when it stops being funny. I wish I could tell her that some jokes have teeth. But I am behind a locked door now, and nobody believes a word I say. So I am writing this because maybe someone will read it, maybe someone will see the pattern before the next house burns. If you know a child who loves pranks too much, watch them. If they start sneaking out at night, stop them. If they mention a man with long fingers and a smile that does not fit his face, believe them. And if you ever find a balloon where no balloon should be, do not touch it. Do not laugh. Do not read the message out loud. Because the prank master loves an audience. And once he chooses you for the joke, everyone you love becomes part of the setup.